What's happening? You know what this is? We all know what this is, right? I mean, and if you don't know what this is, um, why don't you? So I'm just kind of playing around a little bit. Just let me know that you're here if you're watching this live. We got a bunch of really cool questions in Tom the Trainer's Tribe to cover in the live today. Some really good questions that came from my stories, as well as questions from the members of the tribe. So if you're new to this, make sure you check the link in the description, because the link to Tom the Trainer's Tribe is in the description. I don't know what a distinction is, but description, I know what that is. So check the link in the description to join Tom the Trainer's Tribe. You can hop in there and you can ask questions. It's a really great community, and it's just growing exponentially. And the vibe in there, like, I always wanted a great vibe in the tribe, and the vibe in the tribe right now is better than ever. Like, there's all kinds of cool, funny posts in there. There's all of the accountability support posts that I offer in there. It's community, it's good vibes. There's no BS negative kind of posts in there. There's no posts about shortcuts or, other things. It's just a really good space, and it's a really good environment. So anyways, I just want to make sure I know I'm giving time for people to come in and say that they're here. The link for Tom the Trainer's Tribe is in the description of my bio as well. If you're on Instagram checking this out, if you're on YouTube, what's up, YouTube? Trying something new these days. LinkedIn also, what's up? All right, so we got some people here. Hey, Jenna. Hey, Austin. We're going to get right into things here. We're dropping the link here in the tribe to make sure that everybody can see it as well. Hey, Jenna, over on LinkedIn. Sorry, on Instagram. Pardon me. All right, so let's do this. Not a ton of questions here today, but that's okay. It's okay. I'll ramble like the rambling man that I am. And Austin is asking, what are the different bar placement techniques that you suggest for front squats, particularly if wrist or shoulder mobility is a limiting factor? I love the exercise, but I struggle with my arms tiring and dropping when I cross them, causing the bar to start to roll forward. And I struggle with bar stability is if I use straps to compensate for my lack of wrist shoulder mobility. So with this here, this is going to be relevant to how strong you are as well, right? Now, a couple of things are going to be relevant. So for those who may not know, and I just felt my whiskers touch the mic, so sorry for screaming at you. But for those of you who may not know, a front squat is where the bar itself is placed across the front of your shoulders, like in front of your neck. You need really good shoulder mobility, and you need really good wrist mobility to manage the bar well. And the best way to manage the bar in a perfect world would be like when you're catching a bar in that placement in an Olympic lift, when you're catching the bar up around your shoulders, which means your elbows are out in front of you, your arms are bent, and your wrist is caressing the bar up in and around your collarbone. Okay. A lot of us don't have the mobility to get into that position, and it takes a lot of work to create the mobility to get into that position. Now, it's one of those things where, like, I think possibly, I just got an aha moment. I think if you were to get into, before doing that exercise, if you were to get into an overhead tricep extension with a cable, and so now you're in that position, right? And you would hold yourself and you would stretch out even higher. So I'm not looking great right now because obviously, like, I'm tight, but like your elbows are up high around your biceps are up and around your ears, and you're doing a tricep extension with a cable sitting on a bench, so that cable is really pulling you up and back. And then you spend time in the bottom of that tricep extension, that overhead tricep extension with wrists behind your head. And that'll really open up your lats, and it'll really open up your triceps. And your lats and your tricep mobility is a factor for a front bar placement, right? For the mobility in order to do that. So that's something that was just like an aha moment. I'm like, what bodybuilding exercise replicates this position? And if you're watching this live and you see the boo-boo on my arm, I just went and donated blood today. So no worries. I didn't nick myself shaving or anything. I don't shave my arms. I swear. So anyways, that would be something that would probably help improve that position. But the wrist mobility is going to be an itch, if you know what I'm saying. If you know what I'm saying, B. The wrist mobility is going to be an itch, if you know what I'm saying, B, right? So with that, if you're having a hard time holding it with straps in that position, I would think try choking up on the straps really, really close to the bar. And so when we're talking about putting straps on a bar, lifting straps can be wrapped around a bar to create like a handle on the bar to hold on to up in front, keeping yourself with that elbows in front of you, high elbow position, holding onto the straps. And you'd want to hold to them as close to the bar as you possibly can. So it will take out the wrist mobility issue. So the overhead tricep extension with the cable to really stretch things out, and you're spending time in the lengthened position, the straps could solve that problem because it'll improve your tricep and your lat mobility. And it'll probably allow for you to get in that position, because then the other factor is where you place the bar. The bar should almost be sitting in this ditch where when I put my elbows up forward like this, there's a little ditch that's created by my shoulder, and it should almost sit in that nook, like right in that nook where when you put your elbows in front of you like that, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you're going to sit in that little nook in there, right? Now, the other factor to this could very well be ankle mobility. And if I recall correctly, I think Austin has pretty long, like the levers. Austin has similar levers to me, like longer limbs per se. I've got a long torso, but anyways, so for me, I naturally wind up very upright in my squat position. If you have, say, really long femurs, for you to squat down, you have to be more similar to a deadlift position in the bottom of your squat. Because if you have really long femurs, you have to kick your hips back in order to get down into that bottom position. So if you have really long femurs, or you have limited ankle mobility, Austin, you are not leaner right now, don't lie. Or if you have limited ankle mobility, then it might be a good idea to put plates under your heels, which has actually a correlation to another question somebody asked here in the tribe, so that you don't have to have as much ankle mobility to get down into the bottom position to have a really upright stance. I'm on screen right now, and I'm just kind of like slowly sinking out of the stance straight down, out of the screen straight down. It's like a magic trick. But you need to, I got you. Okay. So, but you need to not lean excessively. And I read Austin's question wrong, or statement wrong. He said, I'm a leaner, not I am leaner. Shows how important it is to pay attention, right? And he meant he does have to lean quite a bit in the squats. So with that, you're going to have to do a couple of things. If you're using a bar, really elevate your heels. I would put like 25-pound plates under your heels if you really have to lean, because it's going to keep your torso and your spine really upright, which means you won't actually really have to be holding the bar up in that little ditch on your shoulder because it's just resting there, right? I think another thing that you could do as well is you could do your front squats in like a Smith machine, just because the Smith machine often would allow for you to kind of, I don't know how well it would work, to be honest, because I've never tried it, but I'm just thinking is like if you were to do a Smith machine and you really drove your feet out in front on the Smith machine with that front squat, it might just naturally place it so that you're in a really upright position, and that would help. And then there comes a point in time too where if those things don't solve the problem, then maybe it's a better idea to just get into like a linear hack squat and then use like a really narrow foot position to keep that really upright stance. But those are the things that I would look at in order to try to improve that position. But knowing you, Austin, I would work on just like literally one set of the overhead tricep extension before you go do that exercise. Spend time in the stretch, really elevate the elbows really nice and high, get those lats to open up, get those triceps to open up, right? And then elevate your heels. Was that helpful, everybody? So next up here, see if we got any other questions. Just let me know it's helpful here in the chat. And then now Steve is asking a question about seeing some girls in the gym doing squats with 25-pound plates, which have a really high heel elevation, and their feet together. Legs are really close together, a 25-pound weight plate under their heels. They both got really low depth into their squats. They broke 90 degrees, decent form. But Steven's question is about having your legs so close together. Is it bad for your knees? Also, the 25-pound plate is a lot thicker, and he understands the mobility issues and the reason to place the plates under your heels, but the thickness of the 25-pound plate seems a bit much. So Steve was actually one of my first ever in-person clients when I worked at Good Life Fitness. So he knows a lot of my tricks, even though I've got more tricks over the years. But I would say there's really nothing wrong with having a 25-pound plate under your heels. So much so that because I wasn't even really thinking about it when I came up with the solution to what Austin was saying. But it was just my natural response. And then I had that aha moment where I was like, Steven actually talked about this in his question. I don't see an issue with that. And when you're doing that, so you got to understand, I guess, why per se. I put a 25-pound plate under my heels quite often. And I put my feet really close together. And I'm doing that. I do it often as like a burner set to hit my quads. In fact, there's a version of that that's coming up in my newest program, which is going to be about extending sets through a stretch position for people training at home because they don't have a leg extension machine. So it's a very quad focused squat when you do that. Now, I add this aspect to it where the best way that I can explain how I do it is I put my feet really close together. I have a 25-pound plate underneath my heel, and then I kind of do a stripper squat. And it's almost like where I'm like dropping down all the way in, trying to tap my butt to my calves. But then when I stand up, I'm actually trying to keep chest low so that I drive hips up, my butt up nice and high, right? Kind of like it's like you squat down. So you squat down and your torso's in this position where your chest is really high. And then your calves are touching your hamstrings. And then when you stand up, you're trying to literally push butt up high when you stand up. And the key to this exercise is it absolutely smashes your quads. Like it absolutely smashes your quads. It's like doing a leg extension with weights. I did it last week and it smoked my quads. I made it awkward for some guy in the gym because I was looking over my shoulder while I was doing it the whole time at him. But so I don't recommend doing that. But it's a good way to hit your quads. I didn't do that, I swear. And it's not bad for your knees, I wouldn't say. Now, the one thing that I would say with this particular exercise is, and Austin's got a question about how do you keep the strain off your low back if you're raising your hips first. Well, that's kind of the thing about this particular exercise is you're not actually doing it with a very heavy weight, right? So you should have the low back health to be able to do that. Like, so for me, for example, when I was doing it, I think the heaviest I got was 2 45-pound plates that I was holding on my chest. I'm wondering, and I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just blowing smoke up my own, you know what, but I'm wondering if these girls in the gym, because they go to the same gym that Steven and I go to, like if they maybe saw me doing it or something, because it's very similar to what I was doing last week. So it's not going to have a strain. So like I hold the plate up in and around my chest, right? Or sometimes I'll literally like hold the plate down low by my hip so that when I'm down in the bottom, the plate's touching my knees. So the best way also to understand as to whether or not your knees are healthy enough for this would be progression. So you could start this exercise. You could do this exercise to start with just body weight and hold on to the rack, for example, so that your knees aren't drifting too far over your toes as you do it, and then slowly take away the stability and then like slowly just increase range of motion. And the more you do it, the stronger, more resilient your knees will get. And then therefore, then at some point you can literally challenge them with weight. So like last week when I was doing it, for example, I had 2 45-pound plates. And when I was down in the bottom, I was resting the 45-pound plates on my knees, driving my knees over my toes even further before I stood up with the awkward stripper squat where I was looking over my shoulder at the guy in the gym. Yeah. It was, I don't know. It might've been awkward for him. I think it was fine for me. So sorry, I'm just being an ass. Okay, so next question is from Jenna. And she said that this might have been asked or answered already. So if so, please ignore it. But are there specific moves that you can perform to try to correct a foot that's slightly outturned? It's bothersome sometimes when I walk and perform certain movements. So there's many factors that'll come with this. Like, so most often, and not necessarily always, most often, I don't know where I come up with the stuff I say. Austin's got a good point. The next time I do that exercise, I'm wearing yoga pants for sure. So most often when you've got a foot that's turned out, it's actually very likely that it's probably coming from your hip. You're probably lacking internal rotation in your hip and probably have excessive external rotation in your hip. The easiest way to test this is to sit on, and I believe Jenna said that she has an issue with some foot stability too, which makes sense with this. Sit on a counter with your sit on a counter with your feet hanging off the counter and your knees bent. Place your hands between your thighs, holding your knees in place, and then rotate your ankles outward. If one ankle drifts outward further than the other, then you're lacking internal rotation on that side. You may very well likely are lacking internal rotation on one side, but there's probably going to be a massive discrepancy on this side. So because you're lacking the internal rotation on that side, you're therefore lacking stability in there, and your body's therefore viewing it as vulnerable, and it's leaning into the external rotators to create stability, although it's like non-functional stability, which are bigger, like your glutes and other things like that. So often it's starting at your hips. The simplest thing would be to do some like hip stretches, stretch out your adductors. Stretch out your adductors. Jenna said she can barely rotate them out at all. So we found it. Ding, 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 ding. Stretch out your adductors. Stretch out your psoas and your quads with a couch stretch. Look up couch stretch by Kelly Starrett. He's a really good guy when it comes to mobility work. So the couch stretch, adductor stretch, and then you want to strengthen those areas. And for me to tell you how to strengthen those areas would be a little bit challenging without doing a full assessment. But a Copenhagen plank is a really good way to strengthen your adductors, for example. There's something called a reverse Nordic that'll help strengthen out your hips and your psoas and stuff. But that's probably where it's coming from. Now, the other factor that could be leading to this is that, like, sometimes, for example, like people have flat feet, and when they have flat feet, their arches fall. When their arches fall, they actually lay down extra calcium in their ankle bone to create stability with this fallen arch. And then also their hips tighten up and their foot turns out. And it's something like, I'm a weirdo in a sense of like, I'm not just because I stare at a guy across the gym when I'm doing stripper squats, but because like when people are walking, I just pick up on these weird things. Like I can like pick up on their ankles and be like, oh, you know, that ankle's jacked. I know that hip's tight. And I bet you they got back pain on that side. It all coincides. But the simplest answer I can give you is start looking at your hip mobility. I had this excessively with my back injury at one point, and I started out by doing a lot of hip mobility stretches. And I noticed when I started walking straighter, I was going on a walk and I was like, I feel different. I feel like I'm walking through my hips, not creeping around my hips. It's hard to explain if you don't experience it. It's like I just feel like my stride, my gait was cleaner and it was straighter after just doing a lot of stretches. The last step in the process of me correcting all these issues came down to foot stability, which I talked about in another episode. I think it was 2 episodes ago. Jenna, I think it was your question. Let me know if it was. I think it was 2 episodes ago. And I will, and I talk about ankle and foot stability and dorsiflexion and how to create stability in the ankle. And so that's probably a factor as well. So like single leg exercises, like the simplest thing I can say to help increase foot stability is start incorporating more lunges where like you're coming through on a lunge, for example, and you're like holding the position and you're moving slow into that position. Even just stand on one foot, for example, like just stand on one foot and start bringing your knee up towards, like bring your knee up away from the ground and feel the stability that has to take place on your ankle. Right. And then kick that leg back and you can feel the stability in your ankle changing. Kick that leg out to the side. That's like the simplest, most regressed way to increase and improve ankle mobility. And then from there, you would increase time, distance, range of motion, right? That's the simplest form, right? But you could also incorporate it into your training because you could do these like walking lunges where you look like really slow when you're going through the walking lunges, and then you reach out, do the other leg, and you step down. And then you move really slow through that walking lunge. So you can be efficient with your time because you're still training your legs. But at the same time, while you're training your legs, you're increasing stability in your ankle and your foot. So like I used to do a lot of the stuff in my own training. I always incorporated methods that would improve, rehab my issues while still getting jacked, right? B stance deadlifts, single leg exercises, things like that. Then it got to the point where I got so strong in those single leg exercises that I can only do them at the end of my workout, or they just like, I can't do walking lunges because I can walking lunge 90 pounds per side, like 90 pounds in each hand. The only thing that actually gives out is like my neck or my grip. So that's another factor that you can use to increase the demand on those stability exercises by literally like fatiguing. And you can start with them in your warm up, and then you can simply put them at the end of your workouts, and there'll be more fatigue in place and therefore more of a demand for those muscles to create stability. Let me know if that was helpful. I feel like I went off on a rambling tangent. Lord, I was born a rambling man. I know that was bad, and I can't even do anything about it. Like it already just happened, right? Y'all heard me sing. Awesome. So Jenna said it was helpful. So this question is coming from my story, and it's about how to stop clicking and popping in the shoulders while you're lifting. So I talked about this a little bit in my story yesterday, but I think it's really valuable information that's deserving of being in the podcast or even on the live. So the most common thing that I would say causes clicking and popping in the shoulders when moving is actually more than likely your scapular placement. So the placement of your shoulder blade over your ribs. Now, we also have to understand that our ribs attach to our thoracic spine, the spine in the middle portion of our back. So your spine is composed of lumbar, which is the lower portion of your back, thoracic, which is the middle to top of shoulder portion of the back, and then cervical, which is your neck, top of shoulders up. A lot of us have this excessive thoracic curve. A lot of people have a lot of excessive thoracic curve, shoulders forward, excessively rounded upper back. The ribs attach to the spine. So think about it, right? What would happen to the rib if it's attached to the spine and the spine's actually sitting higher, further away from its alignment of center than it should be? Those ribs are going to now sit higher, further away from their alignment of center. Okay. Well, the shoulder blade needs to glide over the ribs. And there's a rotational relationship. The shoulder blade needs to rotate. The shoulder blade does a lot of stuff, but it not only, when you're going overhead, you can actually feel it if you concentrate about it. If you're trying to lift your arm overhead, if you're really in tune, you can feel your shoulder blade rotate. And if your shoulder blade's not rotating properly or it's getting hung up on ribs, then you're going to get improper placement of the humerus, which is your bicep bone, we'll call it. The humerus, it attaches in and it's supposed to sit in its position in the shoulder blade. Okay. And then it's supposed to glide in that position as the shoulder blade rotates and it moves. If the shoulder blade's not moving properly, then there's going to be click and catch in that position. It's the most common thing that, in my opinion, creates shoulder popping. So what you would want to do with this is increase thoracic mobility. The best thing that you can do to increase thoracic mobility is to give yourself a big juicy hug, right? And don't look at anybody else in the gym when you're doing it. Like, this is for you, right? So give yourself a big juicy hug. As you can see what I'm doing here, it's like I'm like hugging shoulder blades. I'm trying to round my upper back, and then I'm going to pull my forearms down, and then I go around in this like circle where I rotate around in this circle to get some movement in my thoracic spine. And then after I do that, I'm going to go on a foam roller, and I'm going to do the same thing. And that's going to get movement in my thoracic spine. Sometimes that's all it takes. That puts the ribs back where they belong, and boom, your shoulder clicking is gone. If you still have clicking, now systematically approach each rib. Take a lacrosse ball. I'm glad that I'm telling you this online and not in person, because nobody can punch me in the face when they find a rib that is out of place. Not out of place, but when they find a rib that's not moving well, it's going to tell you. It's going to let you know. And then when that's the case, then what you want to do is you want to pin that rib down with the ball and then move your shoulder into the overhead position, and you'll get the clicking and the clunking and the clacking and the snap Rice Krispies stuff happening or whatever, but you'll also feel the ribs moving, and then you'll also feel that stuff improve. Look up Kelly Starrett sticky rib syndrome. Guy was one of my first influences in training, and where I come up with a lot of the stuff for rehab, a lot of the original stuff that I learned from rehab, I learned studying him. And if you're a trainer listening to this and you want to be a good trainer, and you want to know how to fix people, because when they're effed up, they can't train properly, you need to know how to fix them. Look up a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard and study it, because you can fix your clients. And not only will you get your client good results and have to not train around all these injuries all the time or all these movement efficiencies, you'll correct their movement efficiencies. They'll move better, they'll be stronger, and you'll be an extremely valuable resource to them. So look it up if you're a trainer, because I know I got some trainers listening to me. Pretty sure I got one trainer in specifically listening to me. I don't think he's here to learn, though. So next question is good exercises after a shoulder injury. So this also came from my story. And a lot of the times, quite often, everybody's go-to after a shoulder injury is rotator cuff exercises. Right? And I actually have a reel coming up next week, right? Everybody has seen the guy in the gym who goes with a dumbbell and he puts his arm by his side and he rotates outward like this, right? He needs to be using a cable or laying on a bench or something, because like gravitational pull is pulling downward. Gravitation is pulling down the shoulder joint, and the rotator cuff isn't loading in that direction. If you were doing that and you were laying down face down on a bench, you would hit those muscles. Anyways, everybody looks at those muscles. I think you know the muscles I'm talking about when I explain it, that exercise. That exercise is done horribly all over the gym, but hopefully never, ever again, because my reel about it this week is going to go turbo viral and it's going to be seen by millions, and I'll never see people doing that again. And what I probably will, but still. A lot of the time people look at those rotational muscles in the shoulder when you're looking at shoulder health and shoulder rehab. And it's not a bad idea, but we shouldn't just like arbitrarily look at the rotator cuff when we've had a shoulder injury. We need to figure out if that's the actual issue or not. And a most commonly overlooked muscle for your shoulder health is your serratus. And your serratus is the muscle in your armpit. And it's the boxer muscle. It looks like a fist in your armpit. And boxers have this massive serratus because they extend on their jabs, on their punches, and they extend. So they train that muscle. Well, what that muscle does is it grabs your shoulder blade and it pulls it in tight against the ribs, like I talked earlier about the clicking in the shoulder. So, for example, when I had my neck injury, my serratus shut off. And my shoulder blade literally just like tilted upward, because when my neck injury and the nerve finally went, that's it, I've had enough, I'm out. Ain't nobody got time for this, and left. And my shoulder blade rotated upward. So if you're watching this, I could raise my arm over my head like this. It was like I could get my forearm, I could barely get my arm over my head, and my humerus, my bicep bone, was at like 90 degrees. And I couldn't get any higher than that because my shoulder blade wouldn't move. So a lot of the time people overlook the serratus. So if you have a shoulder injury, you got to figure out what has been caused by that shoulder injury. Quite often, there's going to be some stability factors in your lower traps and your rhomboids and all the areas of your rotator cuff. Yes, that there's a high probability of such, but we shouldn't just arbitrarily be going there, right? We need to figure out, like, what about the serratus? And the serratus is like so overlooked. And I'm telling you, even if you don't have a shoulder injury and you start training your serratus, and the easiest way that you can do that is to do a plank. And when you do a plank, I want you to like protract and retract and protract and retract. Do a plank like that, and then go do an overhead press and tell me you don't put up a PR, because you improve stability and scapular positioning, which is crucial for your overhead press, right? You have like a ta-da moment, right? But often when you're suffering from an injury with a shoulder, like if it is stabilizer muscles, those are the areas that you want to look: serratus, rotator cuff. But then also, like, depending on the severity of the injury, you might want to also talk to a healthcare practitioner that specializes in those injuries, right? Because like you might want to get some memory, you might need to get imaging done or whatever the case may be. But so I know, ranting, but one of my most, and there's a reel coming up about it. So if you're not following me on, if you're not following me anywhere on my socials, Tom the Trainer Fitness on IG, Tom Mooland on Facebook. It might go on to LinkedIn, because we only put our top performing reels over on LinkedIn just because it's a different kind of platform. But there's a reel upcoming, and it talks about rotator cuff exercises and how what I do is I pin a yoga block by my side, because I had to do a lot of rotator cuff rehabilitation and a lot of serratus rehabilitation with my neck injury. And then you do these external rotations with a cable, pin the yoga block by your side, and then you grab a handle of the cable and you try to rotate upwards. Then you can turn to the side and you can try to rotate sideways, right? And you can put the cable up high as well, higher than you. And then you can rotate, and there's an upward pull. And you can set up the cable so that it's directly in line with where you're rotating and it's coming straight off of your wrist. I work all those different angles when I'm working my rotator cuff. Everything with cable work. And if you don't have a cable, then lay on a bench and replicate those positions. Another really powerful exercise for rehabbing your shoulders, they're called WTFs. So you want to create a W. So the easiest thing to do is like, and here's the other thing too, is like people butcher these things. And I see even people teaching it butchering these things. Like, I'm a pretty strong dude. You give me a 2.5 pound plate, make me lay face down on the turf zone in the gym, and then elevate my chest off the ground, take those 2.5 pound plates in and align somewhere with my ears, and then squeeze my shoulder blades together to lift those plates off the ground. It is hard, right? And then at the same time, you could then reach outward as you do that, keeping the plates off the ground, like doing like a Superman. And then what you can do is in that position, then you can try to bring your arms, keep your arms off the ground with these 2.5 plates all the way. So you go all the way around, so that your now wrists are in line with your hips and you're driving your chest up and your shoulder blades. then you can set the weights down back there. Then you can lift them. Then you can rotate around, or you can lift them, hold, change position slightly, drop them, lift them, hold, change position slightly. Let me know if that makes sense. And it might make more sense visually for the people watching the live than people listening to it, but it's a really, really good exercise for shoulder health. Next up. The last question that we have today, and I'm going to go search and see if maybe there's some other questions elsewhere, is it easier for men or women to lose fat and get in shape? I personally don't see a correlation between genders in a sense of, is it easier or harder for them to get in shape? Because I work with both. I work with men and women. But what I will say is bigger men, like, to get in good shape, it's going to be equally as hard for everybody. And you have to be intelligent about how you do it. No matter whether you're male or female, the leaner you get, the harder it is to get leaner. So if we're not talking about like getting in like ripped, stage ready photo shoot shape, then I'm going to say there's no correlation. Especially if you're working with a coach like myself, who doesn't just give you a roadmap, but literally teaches you how to read the map and what you need to do before you're expected to do it. So I have a complimentary onboarding course for my clients that's a week long, and it teaches them everything that they need to do, including their fundamental movements so they move extremely well: squat, bench, deadlift, rows, etc. How to breathe and brace and protect your spine in training so you don't get hurt. The principles of external rotation in your shoulders and your hips, and internal rotation in your shoulders and your hips relative to joint position, and these kinds of things, so that when they start the program, they have all the skill to be successful. If you don't know what to do, whether you're male or female, it's going to be equally as hard to do what you need to do. But if you're working with somebody who can just teach and tell you what to do, I don't see a massive correlation between difficulty levels. I think it doesn't matter gender. I just think it matters is like, how bad do you want it, right? How bad do you want it? And are you willing to execute on those behaviors? And it's like, unless, because like, it's like, I'm just catching on my words because I'm thinking, well, a 200-pound man is going to get to eat a lot more food than, say, a 120-pound woman or a 115-pound woman. Yeah, it's true. He is. But then in the same sense, like, his metabolism is much higher. He's probably going to be equally as hungry as a 120-pound woman. Do you know what I mean? So I don't see a correlation there personally. I definitely see a correlation in mindset of people. I got an upcoming podcast that's coming out soon about the importance of integrity, right? It's not a gender thing. It's a mindset thing. Different genders, I would say, have different sabotaging mechanisms to not be successful. And I won't get into them because I don't want to offend anybody, men or women. But I think it's a mindset thing more than it is a gender thing. 1,000% it is. 1,000% it is. All right. So I think that's everything. It's just like, again, you know, it's like, how bad do you want it? Like, if you want it, you're going to do it. If you want it, hire a coach. If you want it, but you don't know what to do, ask somebody what you need to do it. And then do what they tell you to do. Don't be resistant. Don't be combative. Trust them. Because if you knew what to do, you wouldn't need to go hire them in the first place, right? And the other thing is like, if you have a goal, go burn the boats all in on your goal, Okay. Right. Don't say that it's super important for you to get in shape and then pass off the responsibility of you getting in shape to other people, i.e., partners or whatever. Right. Well, I try to get in shape, but my wife does all the cooking. So what can I do? Or will I try to get in shape, but my husband, you know, gets takeout 3 nights a week. What can I do? Right. You have to own your own responsibility for your goals. And if you want your goals, you got to go for it. Right. And you have to have that mindset to go for it. And you have to have the follow through and you have to have the commitment. Right. So that's like the biggest thing. I'm going to have an upcoming podcast about commitment because, like, even like language with commitment, commitment equals success. Language with commitment. Like, I'm committed, but I'm going to get started after the holidays is not commitment. I'm committed, but I have to figure out how to do this without making too many changes to my lifestyle is not committed, right? You know, commitment is all in. I'm willing to do this. I'm going to do whatever it takes to do this. And I think whether you're male or you're female, when you're in that position where you're like, I'm going to better myself and I'm going to do this, and you're ready to do it, it doesn't matter what gender you are. You're ready to do it and you're going to do it. Especially what I find with the clients that I work with, obviously, because when you hire me, you're at a point where you're like, you know what, I'm done, pardon my French, fucking about. Show me what to do and I'm going to do it. But I also screen my clients to ask them, like, are you willing to do the things I tell you to do? Because if they say no to that, I'm like, well, then sorry, I won't take you on as a client, kind of thing. I don't know. I think maybe I'm ranting or rambling or whatever. I just think it's a topic that I really actually resonate with is commitment. And I hear a lot of people who say that they're committed. And this isn't directed to the person who asked the question either. This is just in general. I hear a lot of people saying that they're committed, and those two things just don't go together. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm 100% committed, but I just got to talk to my husband or my wife and ask them if it's okay if I get in shape. Yeah, I'm 100% committed, but like, I got to find a way to still, only train 2 days per week and do this, right? Or like, yeah, like I'm committed, but like I'm not willing to track my food or meal prep. Like, no, those things aren't commitment, right? Anyways, I'll stop ranting and rambling. Having said that, like, if you are committed and you want some help, hit me up with a message. I do got a couple openings on the team this month. I cap it at 50 clients per month. I am organizing something really exciting for this month. Something I'm like, so keep an eye out for that. There is something really, really cool coming down the pipeline that I've never done before. Jenna actually messaged me about it. So she knows. Jenna, keep it a secret. She knows what the secret is. She was like, this is totally something that you should, like, offer to people and sell to people. And I was like, well, I'm actually going to be giving it away for free to people. So keep posted for that. Keep an eye out. Have the best day ever. And if you want help getting to your goals and you're committed, hit me up with a message that just says coaching, and we'll see if you're a good fit for the team. And I want to thank everybody for their input in the live and their questions. Hope you all have the best day ever.